Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SB Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from the K-Pop Demon Hunters movie titled Golden. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on YouTube. Now, before we get into it, full disclosure, I do tend to get kind of emotional with this one, so if you're looking for a reaction, you may actually get it with this one. I typically try to avoid reacting too much because I simply like to sort of listen to the music and kind of analyze it. But we're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. Great use of triplet flow with the sequences here. Great use of call and response with the vocals here. I love the sub bass in this part, fantastic portamento. It kind of tugs at my heartstrings in a way that not a lot of songs do. This song breaks me, and I'm not sure why it is. I think a lot of it comes from the context of the movie. If you haven't seen it, I know this video is going out quite a wee way after the movie came out. If you haven't seen K-Pop Demon Hunters, I would thoroughly recommend it, but you understand the context of her trying to hit those higher notes and how difficult it is for her to do that, and then you get this song. And it's just such a beautiful thing, you know? Working the triplet flow into the vocals here. And it just fades out with the bell curve at the end. It's just so effective rhythmically because you have the sequence that and it's very different with the pulse of the actual 1, 2, 3, 4 dun 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 dun. The accent placing with the rhythms in the different sections is really effective, and I love the diversity there. But we're gonna talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named the K-Pop Demon Hunters, titled Golden. Now, first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think it's about people coming out of the shell, starting to become more sure of themselves, figuring out the direction they want to head in life, not being torn between, breaking through the walls that they have there, their own sort of insecurities, becoming the best version of themselves they can be. I think that's what a lot of different people talk about. There are different angles from the different members of the group, but ultimately they come together overcoming their own adversities to a point where they can celebrate themselves and what they managed to accomplish. Even talking about the song gets me, and I don't know why. It's like I deliberately don't listen to the song around people because it affects me like this, because I don't want people to sort of focus on it too much. I mean, like, granted, I'm making a video about it, but maybe it's even sort of coming to terms with how the song affects me. Like, I've recently reviewed songs that are phenomenally successful, such as like the song 2-1 from Blur, or because these are songs that I've been working with students, sort of teaching them. I don't think I prefaced that at the start of those, but these are songs that have been commonly people wanting to learn them. I just don't, it hasn't affected me. I don't think I can relate to it like this one. There's just something done here where the story at face value isn't particularly unique. But I think, again, it's part of the audiovisual experience, the journey you have with the movie where you sort of see their character development, their growth, it being more than simply just a stasis thing. This is a product of where they've gone, and you can tie things together and make sense of it. It's just ultimately very satisfying, and I think that it's really well produced. I think that in terms of the vocal performance carrying the story that's told there, because it's a really interesting story that could be, again, it could be generic, but it isn't. The way it's delivered and sung is phenomenal. I love the mixture of different vocal styles within it, but I feel that it's so good to have a predominant focus on the main character. I forget the names, unfortunately, and I know that's not ideal, but I've you know, they've got their own perspectives in the first verse, but then you finally get to that second verse section, and it's simply their sort of like intentional approach to it. You've got like some rapped parts there, some sort of like more kind of melodic sung parts there, and different phrasing and sort of like and stanzas, but it's ultimately kind of like curves around into itself. You have the vocal melodies and the harmonies within the sort of like choruses, as well as the call and responses as well, which are fantastic in certain moments. We're all very comfortable in head and chest voice there, and we are able to identify the different characters with their own sort of vocal styles, their own attitudes and expressions in a way that sort of like makes the first verse more interesting, for example, but also sort of like puts you in a position when you care about them. Like you can relate enough of it to yourself without it becoming disparate in terms of what the overall context of the piece is. So that connection is formed there, and while the movie does kind of discuss there's like parasocial relationship that a lot of people have with the musicians that they follow, it's done in a way where I think it's a positive connection. I think that that's something the movie tries to ascribe, is this idea that if people are going to become disattached to the people that they look up to, it may as well be like a thing where people are growing and becoming better and happier because of it. It might as well be a nice thing, a lovely kind of thing where people where they glow. They're golden. So ultimately, I feel like it's sung incredibly well. The head and chest voice, bit of vibrato there, like some legato passages there, technically proficient there, a little bit of, and we explore our range well. So the low parts in like the interlude section before the final chorus where we rise up out of our ether, it's kind of insinuating, hey, we were down low with our voice because we felt sad, but then we came up because we were coming out of that mire. It's very good. Structurally, at 3 minutes 18, I think it's incredibly effective. It's kind of like split in two, because the first half you get the individual perspectives, their own sort of like struggles, and then they're kind of like coming up, and then you have like going back down to that second verse there where we're kind of on our own and we're sort of like going through what we've gone through to get to that point, and then we come up again and we're kind of like working it back into the kind of like the triplet flow of some of the parts we've had, like in the intro. The instrumental parts there, like we adjust because we're aware that we can't take the listener's attention for granted. It's done in a way which is incredibly precise. There are absolutely no moments in this track where there is filler. We play really interesting games with the rhythm, the positioning of accents within the flow, the synth sequences. I love the smoothness of the portamento, the 808s, the bass there. It's phenomenal there. Just a lovely sort of shimmer and sheen to that. I love the mixture of different drum grooves, the chord note pulse there with elements there. But I think that we also explore that the triplets when necessarily reliably in a way that doesn't sort of like distract. Despite the accents being in different positions, as I mentioned, it's done in a way where it's very sort of like tactful. It's done as sort of like a contrast device, while still being sort of fundamental to like the focus on the chord note grooves, making it a dance track, kind of bouncing up. And it's not often you really get triplets in these kind of songs. Usually it's like 8ths or 16ths, but kind of having almost like a swing and kind of like a groove to it through that alternate kind of like sort of flow is fantastic. And it's a very tight, again, precise performance rhythmically, but also harmonically. It's interesting. The synth sequences you have to start with the triplet sort of like rhythms, they're accentuating, as I understand it, extended chords there, the sevenths, and I feel like they're just so eloquent for the complexity of the emotions described within the piece. But then you have this wonderful pulse to these sort of bass kind of like synths, and the verse sections, like the first one with these occasional reverb tails and the vocals that make it seem sort of like ghostly, and it's that pulse is just so satisfying, and it kind of rises a little bit, and you got the vocals going overflowing on the various layers on the sides of the stereo field, and so you're surrounded by these different voices in their head, which contrasts with the more precise flow of the words. And like there's this really kind of sincere pad that has this sort of magic to it in the background, which becomes more kind of present as you go up into that chorus part and that bridge, or that bridge and chorus part, should I say. When they say I'm done hiding, things open up and things get lighter. And there are actual drum fills. I like the fact that we have the triplet snares coming in before the break there. We come down with the sort of like the chord note kicks and stuff like that, and we just have great rhythmic unison with the vocals, with the other elements within the mix. And there are these kind of 80s kind of like keys that are in the background there that kind of sparkle. It's kind of like the stars in the sky, there's a bit of magic, and it's very sincere. It's a beautiful piece. It's gorgeous. And I think when, in that later, like second half side of it, when there's really no instruments maybe aside from the pad and the vocalist is by themselves sort of talking about their difficulties, it's good to have that contrast with the heaviness relative to in the previous chorus there. It's dynamic range there. It's just great to have variety. And we have this kind of AABA thing going on within that final chorus there, where we have variation with it, and we come back to the original idea, and then that is kind of like with the vocal chops kind of like repeated in that last section there to kind of show that we're continuing to do what we've been describing post. There is a change after the piece there which shows development. And I think This is something that has been sort of mentioned before, I think, in this review by me personally. I'm not trying to say it's a unique thing. It's more just like how wonderfully present the vocals are in the mix, not just from a production perspective, but also because of the space that is allowed within the arrangement and instrumental layers to have those high notes kind of resonate. I just think it's got such a wonderful kind of like purpose. It's very purposeful in the sense that it is trying to shine in the mix there with the golden sort of like shimmer of it. You couldn't really necessarily get that in the low range, so I think the higher part was fantastic, really appropriate. Thematically, I think that the complexity of extended chords in the start and out bits are meant to sort of like be contrasted to the more sort of like not minimalist but straightforward pulse of the dance parts, and simply trying to get out of your own head and trying to get past those sort of like thoughts that block you and kind of screw you up, and getting out of your walls and breaking through them with the pulse of the kick, and getting you to a point where you appreciate those kind of more kind of like straightforward corporations and bass lines. And there are moments of like, I think there were also some chromatics or something like that, some notes that are outside of the diatonic in certain parts or transitions, some tense chords throughout the piece in certain occasions, but ultimately it's more sort of like Major Mario oriented, and I feel like that is a nice sort of, again, nice contrast there. It's not too overcomplicated. There is a focus and a focal point on the vocals throughout the piece, but there's enough to appreciate with the groove as well, the backing. But of course, you know, like the studio production is flawless. They're phenomenal sort of like leveling and mixing of the vocals, as well as the synth bass, drums, pads, keys, etc., as well as any sort of like riser or filtering effects, or like kind of like fills or alternate kind of ways of processing certain instruments. There were no weird resonances in the frequency spectrum. Things are nice and wide in the stereo field. Music's around you in the headphones there, and it played around with expectations in that regard in a way where it sounded like polished, whilst also being kind of warm and pretty, like caring. It just had it didn't seem like it was trying too hard to get your attention. It's more like a track where it just had enough really interesting stuff in it for you to want to remain around it. And I feel like a lot of songs could learn from it, and I think that's part of why the song is just done so well, is that it's just really, really well designed. It provides a stable platform for the storytelling on top of it, but also showcases an understanding of both like modern pop music and also just making music that isn't sort of like too try hard, I suppose, for a little bit, like a bit of word. But there's a nice sort of like bell curve at the end dynamically, again, not saying loud the entire time. We mess around with intensities of the highs and lows. Nice and loud with that punks to the bass compression, limiting's handled. And finally, a note on the vocalists. They could clearly sing, they could rap, they could do whatever they needed to do. They're professionals on the microphone. They paid homage to this in a way that was extremely satisfying. I'm really thankful that I had the chance to listen through it, because, you know, thank you for watching my review of this track from an act named, or K-Pop Demon Hunters, should I say, titled Golden. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, or should I say Huntrix, right? I keep saying K-Pop Demon Hunters, Huntrix. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I'm hoping it's Huntrix, and you all aren't gonna like flame it. But stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time. Is need to help more than ever with all the great stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP reviews. Spiderhands out.